This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. One of the men had delicate features and a head of silver hair. He wore an indifferent expression as he looked down. Fanghua, what do you think of this Li Yunxiao? The yellow-robed old man beside him was short and slightly bloated. He looked at the silver-haired man with a faint smile. The silver-haired man's eyes gleamed as he slowly said, "I don't know." The old man chuckled. "You're still as cautious as ever. This Li Yunxiao is just an 8 stars martial supreme. He's not as divine as the legends say. I wonder how many moves he can take from Feng Jun." "How many moves?" The silver-robed man beside him, who was slightly stronger, smiled and said softly, "You reclusive families are still so supercilious. This kid is the #1 rising star that City Lord Jiang personally said. Don't tell me you don't believe in City Lord Jiang's judgment?" Jiang Charan? These people from the 7 superpowers were all arrogant but weak. Their strength was average, but they thought highly of themselves. It must be because Yunxiao's level has exceeded the younger generation of disciples in Red Moon City, that's why he's crowned as the so-called #1 rising star. What a joke. Mu Hong laughed without restraint, his eyes filled with undisguisable mockery. There are so many so-called geniuses like him in our hidden families. The silver-robed man didn't argue. He stood with his hands behind his back and smiled. "In that case, why don't we make a bet? Let's bet on Li Yunxiao and Mu Fengjun and see who wins." Does Elder Tianyun want to bet on Fengjun? Mu Hong sneered. Of course. Young Tianyun laughed. "I bet on Li Yunxiao." "Oh? Then what are the stakes?" "You and I can't possibly take a few hundred primeval stones or something like that," Mu Hong sneered. He was extremely confident in Mu Fengjun. "You can name the bet as long as I can afford it." Yang Tianyun looked at him and said. Mu Hong's expression changed slightly and he asked suspiciously, "Is that true? Has Elder Tianyun seen this Li Yunxiao's true strength?" "No, but I've heard of him. I didn't expect him to rise so quickly." Yang Tianyun shook his head. "The reason why I dared to bet on it was because I believed in Jiang Charan's judgment." Mu Hong pondered for a while and could not help but look at Yunxiao a few more times. He did not believe that Yunxiao could beat Mu Fengjun, but when it came to a bet, he had to be careful. "There is a rank 9 material, Soul Sprout, among the items your sect is trading with my Sea of Soul formation. I want 5 kilograms." Yang Tianyun chuckled. 5 kilograms of soul sprouts? Mu Hong jumped in shock and his expression changed. 10 jin is too much, 5 taels at most. Mu Fenghua, who had been silent the whole time, was also moved. He looked at Yang Tianyun with a profound look. "You and I can be considered the top existences on this continent. If you don't have 5 kilograms of soul sprouts, do you have the nerve to take it out?" Yang Tianyun smiled. Mu Hong snorted heavily and said, "My Mu clan only earns 1 or 2 taels of soul sprouts every year. If I were to take out 10 caddies to bet, I would definitely be beaten to death by the clan head if I were to lose. In the end, it's Elder Hong who's not confident," Yang Tianyun said with a smile. "Don't try to provoke me." Mu Hong waved his hand and interrupted. "If it's Fenghua, I'll bet 10 pounds of soul sprouts with you. Although I'm sure that Fengjun can win, there's still a risk. I can bet 1 pound of soul sprouts." "All right, 1 jin it is." Yang Tianyun was a little suspicious. 1 jin of soul sprout on my side, then what kind of equal bet will Elder Tianyun put up?" Mu Hong said coldly. "I'll be generous. 5 taels of gold for a day," Yang Tianyun said with a smile. "Heavenly Shine Imperial Gold." Mu Hong was shocked and overjoyed. As if he was afraid that the other party would go back on his words, he immediately laughed and said, "Elder Tianyun is indeed forthright. The Sea of Soul formation stage is indeed rich and overbearing. What the MU family is lacking is this kind of peerless precious material. 5 taels of heavenly shining gold is enough to forge a high-grade 9th-level profound armament. Moreover, if it is used to upgrade the existing profound armament, it can also increase its power greatly. Its value is far above a gene of soul sprout. Mu Fenghua was much calmer than Mu Hong. He said calmly, Elder Tianyun is so generous. Obviously, you are very confident in Yunxiao's victory. Actually, I'm also very curious. How can a martial honor restrain the Emperor Qi of the 9th heaven? Yang Tianyun smiled indifferently. However, I know Jiang Charan very well. He's a very steady and cautious person. He never talks nonsense and never does anything without reason. The Red Moon City has been running steadily these years, so I believe everything he said. Yes. Mu Fenghua nodded and said, it's not impossible for a martial supreme of the 8 desolates to deal with the Emperor Qi of the 9 heavens. However, Feng Jun is no ordinary expert. Let's wait and see. Yang Tianyun smiled faintly, but his eyes were sparkling as if he was thinking. Yunxiao had no idea that he had become a tool for others to make money. If he had known, he would have extorted them. He had now come to the 2nd floor of the trading hall with Mu Fengjun, and there were many people crowded there. In the center was a large array with a water screen suspended above it. In the image, 2 cultivators were fighting each other, each of their moves fierce and fierce, as if they had a deep hatred for each other. Moreover, everyone was talking and laughing, watching with great joy. The 2 figures in the water curtain were both at the peak of the martial venerable realm. The 2 of them were standing in a dark independent space. Yunxiao glanced at the array and immediately understood what was going on. He began to pay attention to the fight between the 2 men inside. It seemed that the battle had already reached its end. Both of them were out of essence energy, and their bodies were covered in spots of blood. On the left, a man in white swept out with his sword, and a ball of sword chi entangled like silk, silver and dazzling. This is a battle of life and death. Someone must die today. Humph. I've been at the peak of the martial venerable realm for more than 20 years, so my comprehension of the rules is far stronger than yours. The green-robed man on the right raised his long sword with all his might. A ball of essence force exploded from the sword, and his entire person turned into an arrow, flying towards the white-robed man. He turned his body into a sword, and his sword chi was like a rainbow. Bang! As the 2 swords clashed, a ball of true force and yuan chi spun like a whirlpool and sucked the 2 in. Pfft. The 2 of them spat out a mouthful of blood and were sent flying. However, the light of the armor on the man's body flashed and shattered with a bang. The man's face turned extremely ugly and his eyes were full of anger. The armor you were so proud of is gone. Let's see how you can fight me. The man in white gathered his vital chi again, and the sword chi split into 2, showing the rotation of yin and yang, and turned into a tai chi light, slashing down from the sky. Bang! A demonic look flashed in the eyes of the man in green. He quickly formed a hand seal with one hand, and a white light appeared around his body. A white armor suddenly materialized and blocked the sword light. Bang! The battle armor received a huge shock and retreated back into the green-robed man's body. He could not withstand all the power and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, his face revealed a ferocious expression. What? Your battle armor, Pishio. The white-robed man's eyes widened and his face turned pale. Who told you that I only have 1 set of armor? Do you think I've been living like a dog for the past 10 years? Go to hell. A cold look flashed across the green-robed man's face. An extremely sharp sword chi shot out and directly pierced the white-robed man's chest. The long sword went through his heart. The white-robed man's eyes revealed a look of despair and gradually lost its color. Bang! The green-robed man poured his essence force into the sword and mercilessly jolted it out, blasting the white-robed man's body into pieces on the spot. Then, he grabbed the ownerless sword and put it away. Although it was only an 8th-tier mystic weapon, it was still a great fortune for these warriors, and not everyone could compare with Yunxiao. Phew, I won. The winner has finally been decided. My neck is stiff from watching. We've been fighting for 10 hours. The difference in strength between the two of them is too small. Yes, if it wasn't for the fact that this green-robed man's family background is even more solid, I'm afraid he would have been the one to die. In a situation where both sides are equal in strength, isn't it a competition of family assets? Soon, the water curtain in the center disappeared, and a ray of light gathered on the array. A door of light gradually appeared, and the man in green who had won walked out from it. His eyes were full of joy and relief after surviving the disaster. An old man walked up, took out a small box, and handed it to him, saying, "You win, this pill is yours." That's great. The green-robed man paid enough money and snatched the pill. He then squeezed through the crowd and fled, obviously not wanting to stay for too long. All right. We're done. You can all disperse. An old man sitting in the corner mumbled, "Those who still want to fight, come and register with me." Yunxiao glanced over, and a faint force from the old man bounced his divine sense away. Clearly, he was an expert. "I want to fight." Mu Fengjun shouted loudly, immediately stopping everyone who was about to leave. The old man raised his head and looked at him. A glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. He squinted his eyes and said, "Kid, you're quite strong. Who do you want to fight? Who was so blind to have provoked you?" Mu Fengjun snorted coldly as he pointed at Yunxiao behind him and said, "It's him. Write a life and death agreement." What? The old man looked behind Mu Fengjun, trying to see who the blind man was. He happened to see Yunxiao, who had a calm face. After a brief moment of contemplation, he suddenly cried out, "Eh!" He cried out in shock, "You are Li Yunxiao." What? Li Yunxiao? Everyone in the hall was shocked and looked at each other in horror. Each and every one of them had a shocked and excited expression on their faces. The young man wanted to challenge the world-famous, the legendary #1 rising star. At the same time, everyone had a question mark in their hearts. Isn't this kid courting death by challenging Yunxiao? Mu Fengjun didn't think so. He said proudly, "Not bad. The person I want to fight is this deceitful liar who doesn't live up to his name. What #1 rising star? Today, I'm going to expose him in front of everyone." Everyone's face darkened, and many of them, who had witnessed Yunxiao's battle, could not help but laugh. Where did this brat come from? To sign the life and death agreement, the ignorant are fearless. Sigh, these days, thinking that you're the best in the world just because you have a little bit of strength. People's hearts are not what they used to be. I hope he won't pee his pants later. Let's see. Since he dares to challenge Li Yunxiao, he must have some strength. Maybe he can withstand 1 or 2 moves. There's a lot of jokers every year, but there's a lot more this year. All sorts of mocking voices rang out, causing Mu Fengjun's expression to change greatly. He roared, "All of you shut up. The so-called #1 in your eyes, I'll hold his head in a moment and let you laugh as much as you want." The old man in charge of registration was also grinning from ear to ear. He quickly said, that's right. Don't listen to their nonsense. Hurry up and hand over the vitality stones to sign the life and death contract. We'll start the fight. I still think highly of you. Teach this #1 a lesson." When Mu Fengjun heard this, he felt uncomfortable. His face was covered with a layer of frost as he said coldly, "I'll make all of you shut up in a moment." He paid the full amount of primordial stones and immediately entered his name on a life and death contract. Yunxiao glanced at the contract and also pressed a name. The old man took a look and kept the contract. He pointed at the teleportation array in the middle of the field and said with a smile, "Go in. You will be automatically transported to the battle space." He gave Mu Fengjun a meaningful look and chuckled, "Young man, hit him hard. You don't have to give me face." Mu Fengjun's face turned livid as he looked at the mocking faces in the hall. He snorted heavily, planning to kill Yunxiao with a killing move and slap these people's faces hard after he entered the hall. The people in the VIP room looked at the water screen projection in the room with different expressions. Yang Tianyun maintained a graceful smile from the beginning to the end as he leaned back on the comfortable chair and sipped his fragrant tea. On the other hand, Mu Hong's face was full of sarcasm as he sneered, "This group of frogs in a well. Could it be that the martial artists of the continent have become so short-sighted? It's a pity that Elder Hong is only betting with me. If he were to open a bet, I guess his biggest gain this time would not be trading with my Sea of Soul formation or going to the end of the world. He would have won the bet." Yang Tianyun said with a faint smile. "Yang Tianyun, you don't have to sneer at me," Mu Hong said coldly. "That's because you don't understand Mu Fingjuan's strength. You won't be able to cry later." "Oh? Then I'll be at ease." Yang Tianyun didn't speak anymore, but the smile on his face didn't decrease. He just drank his tea. Mu Fenghua, who hadn't said a word, was still standing there quietly. His eyes were fixed on the water curtain, and he didn't move at all, as if he was a wood carving. Yunxiao and Mu Fengjun walked into the formation one after another. The light of space conversion lit up, and the two were soon sent into a dark space. It was endless and boundless, the most suitable place for fighting. Yunxiao sniffed the air and felt a little uncomfortable. A very strong smell of blood filled the air. The killing here was too heavy. Obviously, it was not just the two men who had fought earlier, but many more people had died. Grudges, murder, robbery, and so on. Countless warriors died every day in the realm of heavenly martial arts. Li Yunxiao, your deception ends today. As soon as Mu Fengjun stepped into the battle space, his aura spread out. Although he was extremely angry at everyone's ridicule, his expression was still cold and emotionless. "I don't think it has anything to do with you," Yunxiao said indifferently. "Whether I deceive the world or not, it seems to have nothing to do with you. If you want to punish the evil, there are so many unfair things in the world, why don't I see you draw your blade?" There's no point in saying more. No matter how glib your tongue is, I can't save you. Right now, Mu Fengjun was bent on using him to establish his might and slap the mouths of those who ridiculed him. He clenched his 5 fingers into a fist, and his entire body turned into a ray of light as he rushed forward. A cold light flashed in Yunxiao's eyes, and the 1,000-year domineering saber appeared in his hand. With the true dragon's tear in his left hand, he slowly activated the blade, and the shadow of the great corpse puppet gradually emerged behind him, gradually becoming more solid. This saber chi is so strong. Mu Fengjun was the first to feel that something was wrong. He was shocked. The saber light flashed, forcing his movements to be a little stiff. The pupils of the few people in the VIP room constricted and their eyes widened as they watched without blinking. Although Yang Tianyun had great confidence in Yunxiao, he was also very curious about why the boy was so powerful. The 1,000 Autumn's tyrannical saber's power grew stronger, and the corpse puppet's entire body emerged. A sword-shaped object crossed with the corpse puppet's body in a flash. Yunxiao sneered and said, "A mere puppet dares to be so impudent in front of me, what a joke." "What?" Mu Fengjun was shocked. He didn't expect that the other party had already seen through his puppetry. The corpse puppet's saber had already slashed out, and the entire space was sealed under that saber. There was no way out. His face still had that cold expression, but it finally disintegrated under the saber light, instantly turning into dust. Hiding in the formation space drawn out inside the puppet? Yunxiao sneered disdainfully. Just as Mu Fengjun was turned into ashes, the space fluctuated slightly, and a young man in silver revealed his true face with a shocked expression. Yunxiao pointed out with one hand, and the giant corpse puppet hovered in the air after launching a strike, its saber light shining like an ocean as it continued to crush down. That youth, the real Mu Fengjun, finally didn't have that numb and cold expression on his face. Instead, he was shocked. He quickly formed hand seals with both hands, and a huge golden puppet appeared in front of him. Mu Fengjun continued to cast spells in front of him as he shouted, spinning nebula. The puppet stretched out its hand and clenched its 5 fingers tightly. A stream of origin power exploded out like a sea of stars and clouds as it violently attacked. What? He's already using the swirling nebula? In the VIP room, Mu Heng's expression turned ugly. He had a bad feeling about this. It proved that Yunxiao's attack had put too much pressure on Mu Fengjun, which was why he had shown his ultimate skill. Boom. The force of the nebula's rotation collided with the corpse puppet's sea of blades, immediately creating two distinct spaces that squeezed each other. They were equally matched. And at the point where the two forces intersected, the powerful spiritual pressure was squeezed to the point that it swallowed each other, as if there were signs of a break in the balance. Interesting, you can actually withstand a slash from the Thousand Autumn's tyrannical saber? Yunxiao looked surprised. He performed an incantation gesture with one hand, then changed the sword gesture and cried out, 1,000 autumns like snow, half a night like a dream, one blade to suppress the soul. 3 golden Maha ancient characters immediately appeared on the corpse puppet. The corpse puppet's body immediately swelled up, and the power of the saber light doubled. It directly pressed into the nebula space. In the VIP room, Yang Tianyun's expression changed drastically. The calm smile on his face disappeared and was replaced by extreme shock and horror. He stared at the 3 Maha ancient characters, and his eyes glowed. The 3 Maha ancient characters were the mental attack method recorded on the dragon bone bead. When Yunxiao used it on the 1,000-year domineering saber, it could simulate Ning Qiue's one sword attack, the song of subduing the soul of time. Although the power of the two was still very different, it had some kind of soul-subduing charm. Pai pa. The blade light was like lightning as it continuously invaded the space of the nebula. The blade chi spread out like vines and completely tore the space of the nebula apart in minutes. Boom boom boom. The nebula space completely collapsed. The sword-shaped corpse puppet instantly crossed over and directly slashed at the huge golden puppet. Bang! The golden puppet exploded and was blown to pieces by the blade light. Mu Fengjun was completely dumbfounded. His mind was completely blank. His strongest move had been so easily crushed by his opponent. He couldn't believe it no matter what. He had completely lost his ability to think. He could only watch as the blade light descended. His eyes were filled with fear and despair. He wanted to open his mouth and beg for mercy, but his throat was too frightened to make a sound under the fear of death. The killing intent in Yunxiao's eyes did not diminish. Just as he was about to kill Mu Fengjun, a hurried voice suddenly came over, "Stop. Don't kill him." Yunxiao was taken aback for a moment, and then a sneer appeared on his face as he looked into the void and said sarcastically, "Who do you think you are? Do you think I won't kill you just because you say so? I'll kill them for you to see." The blade light's momentum didn't decrease, and it was about to completely cut Mu Fengjun into pieces. "I am Yang Tianyun from the Sea of Soul Formation. Let him live and we can talk." In his shock, the voice immediately revealed his identity and said anxiously, "This person also has a great background. Everything can be discussed." Yunxiao's heart jolted, and he finally stopped the saber. Then, he performed an incantation gesture with one hand and put the 1,000-year saber away. At this moment, Mu Fengjun was completely scared out of his wits. His entire body was as white as a sheet of paper, without the slightest trace of blood. His eyes were filled with fear and terror. The disciples of the reclusive families were all strong, but they lacked real combat experience and awareness of death. There was still a huge gap between them and the warriors on the heavenly martial continent who fought on the line between life and death all day long. Yunxiao stared at him coldly and said, "You have a pretty good backer, so you can keep your life for the time being." He turned around and was just about to leave the battle space when countless golden rays of light suddenly gathered in the air, condensing into a golden ball in front of Mu Fengjun. It continued to grow in size, and the golden puppet that had been shattered into pieces had actually recovered. It was just that the spiritual energy was too lacking. Memory Origin Gold. This puppet actually had memory origin gold that could repair itself infinitely. Yunxiao was taken aback, but then his eyes lit up. With a wave of his hand, he grabbed the golden puppet and threw it into the Divine Realm tablet. Looking at Mu Fengjun, who was trying to resist, he sneered, "That puppet is not bad. I like it." I want it.